Your 1440p monitor says HDR, but that label can be a trap that ruins your upgrade. At 1440p, bad HDR doesn't just look dim, it makes everything feel gray and uncomfortable. Today I'll show 5 fake HDR traps, then give quick checks that protect your money fast. You'll finish knowing what to buy for your games, your room lighting, and your GPU. Trap 1 is HDR badges with weak contrast, especially display HDR 400 without real backlight control. A monitor can meet a brightness number, yet still lack the punch and depth HDR should deliver. When blacks lift, highlights glow, and dark scenes look washed out instead of rich and cinematic. If the listing hides contrast and dimming details, treat HDR as marketing, not a feature. The safer check is sustained HDR brightness plus real local dimming behavior in dark scenes. Look for reviews showing highlight peaks and black levels in games, not only a single chart. Trap 2 is peak brightness that collapses after 1 second, so HDR feels like weak SDR. Some panels spike in a tiny window, then drop hard so daylight scenes never stay bright. You want stable highlights during long scenes, not a quick flash that only helps marketing photos. If brightness collapses, tone mapping gets weird and the image looks flat or clipped constantly. Good reviews show sustained brightness patterns, plus dimming stability over time, not vague guesses or claims. Trap 3 is no local dimming, or dimming so weak it creates halos and smears everywhere. HDR needs bright highlights next to deep shadows, which requires fine control of the backlight. Edge-lit dimming often spreads light across the panel, so eye balloons and dark games look foggy. Some monitors claim dimming, but only have a few huge zones, so contrast still feels fake. If you game at night, weak dimming is obvious immediately, especially in menus and loading screens. Old and well-tuned mini LED usually win HDR contrast, but real-world implementation and tuning still matter a lot. Trap 4 is wide gamut hype with bad HDR calibration and lock settings you can't fix. A monitor can claim big color coverage, yet ship oversaturated HDR presets that look cartoonish. Then skin tones go orange, shadows crush, and bright colors clip in the blobs with no detail. Also watch HDR modes that lock brightness, disable controls, or break VRR and overdrive settings. If you can't adjust tone mapping or paper white level, daily HDR use becomes annoying surprisingly fast. Look for reviews measuring HDR color accuracy and EOTF tracking, not just looks vibrant opinions. Trap 5 is HDR, paired with poor motion handling, making 1440p gaming feel smeary and messy. At 1440p, you notice stutter and blur more, especially during fast turns and tracking targets. Bad overdrive adds ghosting, and slow response times make dark HDR scenes look muddy and noisy. Check response time charts, overshoot behavior, and real motion footage, not just refresh rate marketing numbers. Now here's the fast buy method, so you don't become a display nerd to shop safely. First, decide your goal: story games, competitive shooters, mixed gaming, or creative work on the same display. Story games want contrast and highlights. Shooters want clarity, low lag, and stable motion first. If you mainly play competitive titles, a great SDR monitor can beat a bad HDR monitor easily. Next, check panel behavior. IPS needs strong dimming for HDR. VA varies. OLED has true blacks. Mini LED can look amazing, but zone count and tuning decide whether halos ruin the experience. Then verify sustained brightness, because peak nits alone doesn't tell you anything useful in real HDR gaming. A highlight that holds for seconds matters more than a peak that collapses instantly in real games. After that, inspect local dimming quality in dark scenes, subtitles, and HUD elements during real gameplay sessions. Good dimming keeps blacks deep without crushing detail and avoids giant halos around bright objects. Bad dimming pumps brightness up and down, which is distracting and can cause eye fatigue quickly. Also confirm HDR mode keeps low input lag, because some monitors add hidden processing delay and feel sluggish. A great SDR lag number is useless if HDR mode suddenly feels slow or unresponsive. If you use console 2, check HDMI bandwidth support, because some models limit 144p at high refresh. And if you edit photos, look for usable sRGB modes, so colors stay accurate when HDR is turned off. Finally, avoid HDR-ready wording, because it usually means the monitor can accept HDR, not display it well. Now set expectations for Windows 11 HDR, because bad settings can sabotage even good monitor hardware quickly. If SDR looks washed out with HDR enabled, adjust the SDR brightness balance in Windows settings. Use HDR calibration tools when available and set Paperwhite properly so desktops don't look gray all day. In games, prefer native HDR sliders over auto HDR when the game supports proper HDR output. Find the Paperwhite and peak sliders first, then adjust slowly so highlights don't clip in bright scenes. Don't max everything, because wrong peak values cause crush highlights or dim images in minutes, not hours. Here are the 5 buyer questions that cut through fake HDR listings fast, even on a phone screen. Does it have real local dimming? And do reviews show it works well in dark content? What is sustained HDR brightness in long scenes, not only tiny window peaks in a lab? Is HDR color accurate? And can you control tone mapping, brightness, and VRR in HDR mode? How is motion clarity, response time, and overshoot in dark HDR scenes and fast shooters? Does HDR mode keep low input lag? And does VRR stay stable without flicker issues? If the seller can't answer, trust measure reviews, not store bullets, influencer hype, or sponsored charts. Now, simple shopping targets. For real HDR feel, prioritize contrast, plus dimming over big HDR badges. If your budget is tight, buy the best DR monitor you can and ignore HDR claims entirely. If you can spend more, old or a well-reviewed mini LED usually gives the biggest HDR jump. Match it to your room. Bright rooms need more sustained brightness than dark rooms to look impressive. Also match it to your GPU, because HDR plus high refresh can increase workload and bandwidth. DLSS or FSR can help keep 144p smooth with HDR enabled, especially in heavy story games. Do not buy a fake HDR monitor and then blame your GPU for the dull, flat picture. The monitor is your window, and a bad window makes every game and video look worse. Quick recap. Weak contrast, collapsing brightness, useless dimming, bad calibration, and poor motion are the traps. Comment your budget, room lighting, and top 3 games, and I'll suggest safer HDR targets. Follow for more practical buying guides that save money, reduce regret, and avoid spec sheet traps completely. Subscribe for the next video on picking a fast 144OP monitor without motion blur or fake HDR.